All right, let's dive straight into this explainer and completely dismantle everything you thought you knew about how your brain stores information. I mean, if you've ever felt that immense frustration because you couldn't recall a name, lost your keys for the 100th time, or just walked into a room and instantly forgot why, you are definitely going to want to pay close attention. Today, we're exploring the absolutely fascinating neuroscience of memory, heavily drawing on the brilliant insights of neuroscientist Charan Ranganath. And we're going to learn exactly why memory is not just some simple playback machine.
So ask yourself, do you remember the past, like a video recording? A lot of us kind of just assume our brains are passively recording our lives, effortlessly and with 100% accuracy. We think we have this little smartphone camera up in our heads, just hitting record on everything we ever see or do. But as we'll see, that assumption isn't just wrong, it actually causes a massive chunk of our everyday mistakes and memory failures. When we expect our memory to be this flawless, perfect recording, we're literally just setting ourselves up for frustration.
Way back in the day, an early memory researcher at Cambridge University named Frederick Bartlett proposed a pretty radical idea that fundamentally shifts our entire understanding of the brain. He realized that we don't remember the past by replaying a video in our heads, even though it totally feels like that. Instead of activating the entire set of neurons from an original event, we just grab these little fragmented glimpses. And from those little bits and pieces, our brain builds a story. It feels smooth, like a video, but it's actually a highly active, totally on-the-fly reconstruction. Now, to really wrap our heads around how we do this, we need to focus on episodic memory. This is your ability to remember a singular event tied to a very specific context, time, and place. Sure, we have semantic memory for random general knowledge, but episodic memory is what gives us the magic ability to re-experience unique moments in our lives. This is what lets you vividly recall your 16th birthday party or remember that you have to take out the trash later, completely tied to that exact context. And the biological hardware driving all of this is your hippocampus. Psychologist Endel Tolving actually referred to episodic memory as mental time travel, because your hippocampus is essentially a mental time machine. It physically organizes and associates all these scattered experiences. It logs who was there, notes exactly where the event took place, records the feelings you experienced, and links all these sensory puzzle pieces together. That way, later on, one tiny cue, like just walking back into a familiar room, can spark that entire specific cell assembly back to life. And this brings us to a super relatable phenomenon we can call the kitchen paradox. We have all been there, right? You walk into the kitchen, you stop dead in your tracks, and you have absolutely no idea why you're there. And honestly, you probably just end up grabbing a snack and leaving. Well, the reason this happens is because your hippocampus craves context. To remember your goal, you actually have to pull up the past context of where you were, maybe sitting at your desk, when you made the decision to go to the kitchen in the first place. You literally have to mentally retrace your steps to retrieve the purpose. So here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. Because memory isn't a static video file, the very act of remembering a past event can lead to changes and updating in those memories. When you remember something, the actual patterns of activity in your hippocampus shift. The past isn't just locked away in some dusty vault. It's malleable. It can be changed, tweaked, and updated simply by the act of bringing it back into your conscious mind. Which is awesome, because we can actually use this updating process to our advantage through something called error-driven learning. This is exactly why simply rereading your notes in the same comfy spot on the couch is a terrible way to study. You actually want to struggle to recall information in new, challenging circumstances. When you stress test your brain like this, unhelpful neuronal connections get pruned away, while the good, adaptive connections are heavily strengthened. So by testing yourself in the library, then a cafe, the memory updates and becomes accessible in literally any context. This messy, constantly updating nature of our memory actually builds into a massive advantage we have over generative AI. Think about it. Generative AI absorbs massive, comprehensive amounts of data just to find common patterns and spit out averages. But human memory operates totally differently. We take in weird, fragmented, highly unique glimpses of the world, literally just the snippets we capture by darting our eyes around, and from that tiny bit of data, we make incredibly rich, complex inferences. And because we aren't just storing boring averages, our memories are the ultimate fuel for our creativity. Human creativity relies entirely on episodic memory to recombine unique, weird glimpses of life into brilliant new ideas. Great artists and poets aren't just regurgitating data like a machine, they're grabbing a bizarre conversation from 10 years ago, mixing it with the ending of a movie they just watched, and synthesizing those unique glimpses into something entirely fresh and new. But okay, there is a pretty wild downside to this creative hardware. You sometimes have to ask yourself, is it a memory or did you just imagine it? Because memory and imagination actually share the exact same brain networks, specifically the hippocampus and the default mode network, which is active when we daydream. Have you ever drafted a text in your head, vividly imagined hitting send, and then realized days later you never actually typed a single word? Yeah, that happens because imagining the future and remembering the past run on the exact same flexible storytelling machinery. To really grasp what happens when this complex machinery fails, Charan Ranganath compares brain networks to a London tube station. It's a great analogy. You've got networks of highly interconnected neurons that act like specific train lines. Then you have these hub stations that allow completely different brain areas to transfer information. And crucially, you have weak connections between different networks, which perfectly allows the brain to be highly specialized for certain tasks while remaining flexible enough to communicate across the whole system. Unfortunately, a highly interconnected transit system is also highly vulnerable. In neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, toxic proteins like tau can actually spread from neuron to neuron, literally traveling down the tracks and causing these interconnected brain network lines to collapse. This terrifying pathology usually starts at ground zero, the hippocampus, before spreading outward to crash the entire default mode network, destroying the brain's ability to communicate and hold on to those precious episodic memories.
Thankfully, on a day-to-day basis for most of us, losing things like our keys isn't a sign of total network collapse. It's usually just memory interference. Our brains store so many memories with overlapping assemblies of neurons. So where you tossed your keys today actively competes with where you tossed them yesterday. To find your keys, you actually have to beat that memory interference by locking on vivid, unique sensory details. You have to actively notice the specific sights and sounds of the exact moment you put them down to make it distinctly different from every other time.
But let's be real, beating that interference is practically impossible if your everyday lifestyle choices are actively sabotaging your memory hardware. Take mental multitasking. It entirely distracts you from the present, essentially preventing the encoding of new memories before they even start. Alcohol physically blocks the chemical changes needed for new memories and creates state-dependent recall, meaning you'd have to be in that same state again to remember. And sleep deprivation, that just shuts down your prefrontal cortex, completely nuking your ability to focus and reconstruct the context of past events.
So how do we actively bypass this interference when we need to? Well, if you want the ultimate shortcut to retrieve dormant memories, lean into the soundtracks of your life. Have you ever caught a whiff of a specific perfume or heard a song from middle school and instantly felt transported? Songs and smells act as perfect retrieval cues because they bypass the mental clutter and tap directly into the unique emotional context of our episodic memories. They're basically cheat codes to your past. As we bring this explainer to a close, I want to leave you with a monumental paradigm shift regarding why we even evolved this incredible biological hardware in the first place. As Charan Ranganath perfectly puts it, memory is not about the past, it's about the present and the future. It is not some dusty, passive archive of old videotapes. It's a highly active, predictive engine. Truly, memory is your life's co-pilot. It orients you in the present moment. It relies on those reconstructed fragments to inform your absolute biggest life and career choices. It identifies the specific context where you function at your absolute best, and it gives you the mental flexibility to project how things could be in the future. It's the ultimate tool for navigating your reality.
So I'll leave you with this one question to chew on. If your memory isn't a passive playback device, but rather a highly sensitive compass guiding your future, what unique glimpses of today are you actively choosing to encode? How will you choose to pay attention to your life right now so your brain has the right pieces to build a better tomorrow? Definitely something to think about the next time you set down your keys.